Mental health has always been a difficult topic to broach, especially for people who have been in the limelight. But after star American swimmer Caeleb Dressel withdrew from the World Championships, he's been indirectly aiding efforts to do away with the stigma of those conversations by talking about his own experience and why he's taken time off. In today's video, we'll be covering his situation and what impact it has on sports as a whole. Firstly, Dressel's withdrawal. The World Aquatics Championships recently took place this year between June and July, and American sprinter Caeleb Dressel had more than his fair share of fans keeping an eye on him while he competed. And he didn't just have the honor of participating, because early on in the meet, Dressel went on to win gold medals in both the 400 freestyle relay and the 50 butterfly events. But despite the success he was experiencing, things weren't all right with the 26-year-old star. After the wins, he also qualified for the 100 freestyle semifinals, but that's when things took a turn. He ended up scratching the event, citing health concerns that weren't fully disclosed. A day later, USA Swimming announced that he was no longer going to compete in the championships. The organization provided a statement to Swimming World, saying that they had discussed the situation with Dressel and his staff, as well as the medical staff, and the decision was then made to withdraw him. They also said they were going to provide him with the assistance he needed to recover, as the health of their athletes is their top priority. But months after the withdrawal, Dressel finally spoke up about why it happened, and it wasn't due to any physical ailment as some might have suspected. Instead, it had to do with the swimmer's mental health. According to his Instagram post over Labor Day weekend, Dressel essentially said that he just needed a break from competition. Next, tackling depression. Discussions around mental health have historically been difficult. There were a lot of misconceptions surrounding ideas like depression and anxiety, and they still persist to this day. It's undoubtedly gotten easier to have these discussions, with people being a lot more sensitive to the situations that might be behind the conditions. But there is definitely a stigma associated with them in certain circles. Professional sports are areas where that stigma persists, and those that suffer from such conditions in those areas are understandably hesitant to discuss them. Caeleb Dressel might have felt like that at some point, having taken time away from social media following his departure from the World Championships. But he returned to open up about the situation after a few months. He was honest in his Instagram post, saying that despite missing swimming, he's been happy without it. In the past few months, he's taken time for his interest, going on his honeymoon to Iceland and hiking through the Appalachian Trail. He's also invested in a vehicle, but it's not your standard athlete's choice. It was a tractor. Dressel hasn't been completely away from the water though, having opted to swim with some manatees for recreation instead of his fellow man for competition. After relating that wholesome piece of information, he concluded by saying that he knows he can have both swimming and happiness, having had both at some point in his life, and that if someone needs a break, they just need to take it. Now, for Rowdy Gaines' response. It was clear from Dressel's post that things aren't black and white for the athlete. It isn't just about being able to win gold or be at the top. It's about loving what you're doing. And though he might love swimming, there's clearly something that's missing for him while he competes. Something that's key to him being happy while he does. After he had read the post, Rowdy Gaines, one of the top swimming analysts in the US, contacted Dressel for a personal conversation about the situation. And Gaines' response reflected the positive changes in public perception of mental health issues in athletics. Gaines himself was once a superstar athlete, having won 3 gold medals at the 1984 Olympics, and has since been the color analyst for NBC Sports at the last 7 Olympic Games. It's clear then that he would have a deep deep understanding of Caeleb's situation, given his personal experience. He talked about Dressel's status to the public during the debut episode of NBC Sports' special series, dedicated to athletes gearing up for the 2024 Olympics in Paris. He started by emphasizing how much of a strain the Olympics are for athletes. It's the premier stage for athletics of all kinds, and participants only have one shot in 4 years to showcase their abilities to millions around the world. That's a lot of pressure, and it makes sense that it would take a lot out of a person. What's more, what does Rowdy think? For Rowdy, the Olympics were clearly what had soured the sport for Dressel this time. Having stated that the event puts a lot of pressure on athletes, he specifically mentioned how it had affected Dressel. After the Tokyo Olympics had concluded, it was clear that he was struggling to get back into the swing of things, and his head wasn't really in it. Towards the end of the year, Rowdy had spoken to him, and recognizing that things weren't all right with the Florida native, he had personally advised him to take some time away from the sport. Dressel didn't really heed him and continued to compete. However, during the conversation the two had in September, he admitted that after 2 months away, he was doing much better, saying that he was now in the best place that he's ever been. At the end of his anecdote, he said that the people interested in Dressel shouldn't be too concerned, because he thinks he'll be fine, both in and out of the water. Moving on, what about Dressel's future? It's amazing that Caeleb Dressel is taking time away to focus on finding what makes him happy again, and the fact that the swimming community is being supportive of that decision. However, there's still the question of his future in the competition. There's no doubt that having a stronger headspace impacts the way that you might perform in your field, but experience is also important. By taking time off, Dressel is reducing the time that he has to train and enhance his physical abilities. After talking about Dressel's mental health, Gaines turned to what the athlete will have to do if he wants to continue swimming at the international level. If it's as he expects and Dressel's hiatus lasts about 6 months, he'll need to go back to training for at least 3 months before he's back in shape and ready to compete. Considering the American trials for the 2023 World Championships will take place sometime in late July, he has plenty of time to recuperate, both mentally and physically, if he does end up wanting to participate. However, there's not too much pressure on him to have to participate next year. Dressel is still in his youth and has a lot of time to build up his legend. If he needs a year to get back to top shape and stay healthy, then it's absolutely worth it. Even Michael Phelps, one of the greatest swimmers in history, retired when he was in his 30s. Up next, Dressel's past. It's important to note that this isn't the first time that Dressel's pulled himself out of competition for an extended period. Back in his senior year of high school, he had done something similar. While this time he had soured on the sport following his successful stint at the Olympics last year, and then at the World Championships now, back then, it was after he'd had a breakout performance at the Winter Junior Nationals. He had taken almost 6 months off from swimming at that time, but when he made his return via college swimming, he'd become that level's top performer, and then even further down the line, in 2017, he became the world's top male swimmer. He held on to that title all the way through to his amazing performance at the Tokyo Olympics. So if you think that Dressel might suffer as a result of his hiatus and mental health break, we think you should reconsider, because he's already demonstrated that he can bounce back whenever he feels like it. Lastly, on depression. It's also important to note that though it's clearly a major part of Dressel's life at the moment, and it's directing his choices, the depression isn't who he is. More often than not, people tend to associate conditions like this with the core of a person and make judgments about their fitness in a field. However, Dressel clearly doesn't define himself by the state of his mental health, and it hasn't held him back from achieving what most of us can only dream of doing. Caeleb Dressel might be known as a swimmer to the world, but that's obviously not all he sees himself as. Individuals are more than just a single focus, and the world of professional sports needs to emphasize that if leaders truly care about mental health. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think Dressel will make a triumphant return next year? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.